So my name is Mikey. I'm a 16-year-old neuroscience researcher and machine learning developer at a program called the Knowledge Society. So I'm really passionate about using exponential technologies to create more effective treatments and diagnostics for mental health disorders. So at the Knowledge Society, I've been working with a bunch of different companies like Harvard Medical School and Apollo Neuroscience to use exponential technologies to solve problems in the mental health space. And you may be wondering, how did I get involved in using all of this exponential technology at such a young age? I'm 16. And I got involved in all of this by taking an unconventional path. And by that, I mean joining a program called the Knowledge Society, or TKS. And TKS is essentially a human accelerator program for young, ambitious people who want to make an impact on the world. So in TKS, we learn about how to use emerging technologies to solve some of the world's biggest problems, like climate change, chronic disease, etc. So through the Knowledge Society, I've learned about blockchain, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, etc., as well as the necessary mindsets I need to make an impact on the world. So, through the Knowledge Society and TKS, I found my passion in neurotechnology. And it's okay if you guys don't know what that is. That's what I'm going to be talking about today. But before I jump right into that, I first want to jump back to Earth 200,000 years ago. So, obviously, looking at this picture, life on Earth was very different 200,000 years ago. These people lived a very different lifestyle. They spent most of their day hunting for food and gathering plants in the woods. And they were very self sufficient. So, they made their own tools, they made their own huts, they lived in caves. And I remember learning about this in history class last year, and it really just made me realize how much the world has changed within the past couple of years, even. Now we have big skyscrapers, we have cars, we have all of this technology that's changing our lives so much. If we told these people that this is what Earth was going to look like in a couple thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, they probably wouldn't have believed us. Now we have a bunch of exponential technologies. We have SpaceX launching rockets into outer space. We have Wi-Fi. We have artificial intelligence. We have computers. And the main point is that exponential technologies are increasing, and human intelligence over time, what people have noticed is that human intelligence has remained relatively stagnant. So while machine intelligence is increasing over time, human intelligence, that is like our brain, has remained the same for the past 200,000 years, which doesn't really make sense. Like, we literally have the same brains as those people living in the caves, but the world around us is completely different. And people, have begun to take note of this. So scientists and technologists have been working on a field called neurotechnology. And neurotechnology is essentially a field that's combining our brains with technology, with different kinds of computers to actually increase human intelligence and solve some of the diseases that affect the most people on the world. So, before we get right into neurotechnology and what it is, we have to first understand the basics. We have to first understand what brainwaves are. So they're kind of like sound waves in that we can't actually see them, but we know that they're there. So when we're doing different tasks, we're maybe swimming in a pool or writing down in a notebook or something like that, our brain emits these things called brainwaves. And our brainwaves actually change frequency based on the task that we're doing and based on our state of mind as well. So, say we're really aware, then we're going to have gamma brainwaves. These are brainwaves at a very high frequency. Or, if we're really tired and sleepy, our brain emits these things called delta and theta waves that are at a much lower frequency. And we can actually measure these brainwaves by putting electrodes on our head using a technique called EEG. And this is non invasive, meaning that it doesn't actually go inside of our brain. But we actually have brain chips right now that you can basically, people put it inside of somebody's brain. Right now, it's primarily being used to treat different diseases, but we have brain chips that we can actually put inside of somebody's brain to read their brain waves. And then based on their brainwaves, we can actually feed these brainwaves through an algorithm through a process called signal processing. And this mathematical algorithm, what it can actually do is decipher the underlying meaning of the brainwaves, because if a person's swimming or if a person's, going on a hike or something like that, your brainwaves are different based on what task you're doing. So if we can use an algorithm to actually tell, what is a person thinking about or what are they doing, then we can actually create some desired output. So it may be a little bit difficult to understand right now. So I'm just going to get right into the applications of this so that you can better understand it and see how it's going to disrupt our daily lives in the future. So, this is what the future of school and the future of learning overall is going to look like. We're all going to have EEG headsets. We're all going to have headbands with electrodes that we're going to be wearing. And these electrodes are going to measure our brain activity and make it so that we can be more concentrated in school and comprehend material at a faster rate. We'll be able to learn faster. So these headbands actually use an algorithm and electrodes to measure our brain waves and then to determine, how concentrated we are or how focused we are and how much we're comprehending different material in school, just measuring our brain waves. And the reason why this is so cool is because we could actually personalize education based on, how well we're reacting to a certain curriculum or how well we're actually comprehending it. And here we can see this is a company called Neurable, actually in Boston, near where I'm located. And what this person has on, they have a virtual reality headset on, and they're using the power of their brain to control things in a virtual environment. I mean, imagine being this person and being able to have a virtual environment and just thinking of moving objects moves the objects. Like they have electrodes on the brain that can detect when the person is thinking about moving an object. So it's totally crazy. And, the technology really only gets crazier and it's going to continue getting crazier. So, in the future, I think that we'll be able to actually record our dreams. So, instead of, actually having to tell your parents about a crazy dream that you have or telling your friends about a dream they were in of yours, you can actually just show them your dream and you'll be able to send it to them on iMessage or something like that. Because what we've actually done with this technology is using these headsets, we've been able to record somebody's brainwaves and then from that reconstruct what they're thinking in their mind. So, in an experiment, they presented subjects or the people in the experiment with a picture of a man. And then the person closed their eyes, and by recording the person's brainwaves, they were actually able to reconstruct that image based on the person's brain activity alone. So, what this means is that, say we had hundreds of these clips, we could actually record somebody's dream and play it. And obviously, the picture of the man on the right isn't perfect, but we can still tell that it's a man. And this technology is only going to become smarter as time goes by. And in the future, I also don't think that we're going to be having to look up things on the internet or having to learn about things through books. I think that we'll eventually just be able to download knowledge and actually download experiences into our head. And again, this may sound like sci fi, but what we actually have been able to do is implant a memory into a mouse. And we use a technique called optogenetics, which is basically just using light to control neurons or the cells in somebody's brain. And we were able to do this to trick a mouse into thinking that an environment was another environment. So, imagine what we could do with the human brain in terms of just thinking about what knowledge we need to download if there was a brain chip in our brain, and then be able to download that knowledge right away with just the power of our thought. Sounds like sci fi, but we've actually done this in mice. And that also goes for telepathic communication as well. This may seem like something totally sci fi, But I think that in the future, and especially with social distancing, will telepathic communication be something that maybe, more intimate than talking to people on the phone or FaceTime. And telepathic communication, it's something you hear about in movies that you may not think is actually real, but we've been able to demonstrate telepathic communication in
It's
mice.
okay, you're making it.
So I think somebody's mic is on. Sorry. Um, you guys can mute that, thanks. But what we've actually been able to do is connect the brains of two mice. And these mice were able to talk to each other telepathically. So they taught one mouse in North Carolina, so in the US, how to do a maze, okay? And this mouse took weeks to learn this maze. But then they had a mouse in Brazil who was hooked up to the brain of that mouse in North Carolina. And the mouse in Brazil was actually able to do the maze in a day because the brains of the two mice, each mouse had a brain chip in it, and the brains of these two mice were connected via the internet. So, imagine what that could be like for humans in the future if we could all communicate telepathically with neurotechnology. And this also has a ton of applications for people suffering from neurological and psychiatric disorders. So, 1 billion people worldwide actually suffer from a neurological disorder, which is a huge number. And in the future, we're going to be able to use neurotechnology more and more to be able to help these people. So, in an experiment, what scientists did was they actually used a brain chip to give a monkey. So, this monkey actually lost movement in its lower legs, but they were able to use a brain chip to give the monkey back its movement in its lower legs. So, what they did was they implanted a brain chip here, and then the monkey had an injury right here. Okay, so what that injury means is that the brain is no longer able to communicate with the legs. So what they did was they wirelessly transmit the information from the brain to the legs, bypassing this injury completely. It goes right over it wirelessly. And again, imagine what impact this could have for humans in the future, humans who are suffering from paralysis. We can also think about it in terms of people who have an amputated arm, an amputated leg. What this guy is doing, he's actually controlling his robotic arm with the power of his brain. He's using his brainwaves to control the hand on the arm, which is totally crazy. Think about how this can help people suffering from different diseases that may result in the loss of a limb. And this is another really fascinating story of a guy. And this guy, he actually lost movement from the neck down. Okay, but what scientists and technologists were able to do was they created an exoskeleton for this man. And he's controlling the exoskeleton with the power of his brain. So right here, you can see him walking. I can send the link into the chat if you guys want to learn more about this. It's really cool. We can also think about it in terms of helping mental health too with neurotechnology. So there's something called the Muse headset that measures your brainwaves, and it helps you reach state of the art relaxation and mindfulness when you're meditating so that maybe you're less stressed when you're doing a test or you're less anxious when you're doing something that typically makes you anxious. And what I'm currently working on with a company called Apollo Neuroscience is creating wearable neurotechnology that can actually stimulate different parts of the brain to help people who are suffering from anxiety and depression. So here, this is a device. It's called the Apollo, and you wear it on your wrist, and it actually creates vibrations that calm the parts of your brain that cause stress. So this is a company I'm currently working at to create this wearable neurotechnology. And in the Knowledge Society, we've also done projects. We make moonshot companies. And what moonshot companies are is they're companies with huge ideas that may not be possible now, but in the future, 10, 20 years, they may be possible. So, what my team and I developed was a company called Neurojoy. And at Neurojoy, we're using neurotechnology and brain devices to help people suffering from mental health disorders. So in the future, I think that just as we look back at cave people now, I think that we're going to look back on the present and really think about why we didn't embrace this technology earlier to make ourselves smarter and to optimize the human experience. So, thanks so much for listening to my presentation.